I'm Amanda Crooke, I'm an herbalist, and I'm going to talk to you about how to select herbs for your Air Tea Kettle. This is a dry herb vaporization platform. So you're vaporizing dried herbs, that's what we're using in here. And then the vapor goes into the kettle, and then you can inhale it. Before we begin, I'd like to say, you need to make sure that the herbs that you are using are safe for you. Sometimes you can know that ahead of time, but sometimes it takes a little experimenting. Plants are dynamic beings, and they are going to interact with everybody's body in different ways. So you need to do a basic safety check. You want to make sure that the herbs are generally safe, that you're using the proper part of the herb. And you need to make sure that you personally don't have any specific contraindications for those herbs. I will say in this form, this is a very safe way generally to consume herbs, assuming those herbs are safe for you. So how do you select herbs from there? Oh, I also want to mention, this is for what we call whole plant material, which would mean chopped up plant material. Not the herbs should not be extracted in any way. You are not putting extracts in here. You are not putting essential oils in here. You're not putting anything liquid in here at all. We're just using plant material. This is designed for dry plant material, but you can use fresh plant material as well, like this piece of wilted catnip. Okay, that being said, there are many, many herbs to choose from. So firstly, because we have space here to really go deep with this, I want you to think of this as an extraction process. Every time you are working with herbs in any way besides just eating them, you're putting the herbs through an extraction process. So if you are making a cup of tea with herbs, you are making a hot water extraction. If you are making an alcohol tincture, you are making an alcohol extraction. If you are infusing them into oil to make a moisturizing oil, you're making an oil extract. And every time you're making an extract, the main question is, what are you extracting for? And that question might have different answers depending on the situation. So we're using these other substances, whether it be steam or water or oil, we're using those substances to pull out these herbal constituents or these phytochemicals, these plant chemicals. We're using that to extract them, to pull them out and make them bioavailable to us in different ways. So in this situation, we're using steam to release certain constituents into a vapor that we can then inhale. If you're using tea, you're using water and heat to extract certain constituents into the water that you are then drinking. An important thing to think about extraction is the different, the different solvents are going to pull out different extracts. So we all know, for instance, that oil and water are very different substances, and oil and water are going to extract different constituents or different phytochemicals. Similarly, steam vaporization is going to release different chemicals into the vapor, or specific chemicals into the vapor and not others. So the types of phytochemicals that dry herb vaporization is going to release is going to be terpenes, and primarily monoterpenes. And terpenes are an amazing group of phytochemicals. They are a way that plants communicate with each other. So for instance, if you have a little arugula plant and a flea beetle is nibbling on the leaf, the arugula plant's going to say, "Oh, I sense a predator," and it's going to release more monoterpenes into the leaf to make it more bitter and less palatable. And then it's also going to release them into the air. And then all the other arugula plants that are around it are going to, they're going to be able to perceive those monoterpenes. Those monoterpenes are going to float in the air and enter into the underside of the plant's leaves through their stomata. So the plant effectively can smell the terpenes, though that's not the proper word, but they're receiving the terpenes through their stomata. And then they know, oh, there's a predator in the area, and then they're going to release more terpenes into their leaves. And that is why if you have some flea beetles nibbling on your arugula leaves, all of the arugula in the area is going to become more bitter. So plants use terpenes to communicate with each other. They also use terpenes to communicate with us, because terpenes are what give plants their fragrance. So monoterpenes are very light. They can float on the air. They float on the air and enter into our nose. They're very tiny. They can cross the blood-brain barrier. So monoterpenes are what we call essential oils or volatile oils. Now, essential oils are neither essential nor are they oil. They're not essential because they're not a part of the plant's primary metabolism, nor are they oil. They're not a lipid, but they act like oil, and they're considered to be essential because when people started distilling them, it was believed that they were like the plant's spiritual essence. And of course, fragrance, is quite important. But essential oils are monoterpenes. So this process of the steam vaporization is going to release the monoterpenes into the vapor. So you might think of it as releasing the essential oils or releasing the volatile oils into the vapor. They're volatile, which is why they can float on the steam. And then when we inhale them, again, they're so tiny, they can get immediately into our bloodstream, and we immediately feel their effects. Now, herbs that are very fragrant, of course, fragrant herbs is a huge category of herbs, but herbs that are very fragrant tend to be dispersing of stagnation. So in herbalism, we'll often talk about different patterns, and stagnation is a pattern. So stagnation might be emotional stagnation, right? Like heaviness, depression. It also could be, like digestive stagnation, for instance, would be constipation. And these terpenes, these monoterpenes that are dispersing of stagnation, can be very dispersing of those heavy emotions, right? So if you think about how you feel when you smell lavender, you smell rose, you just feel this opening and expansion. That's that dispersing sensation. And terpenes are quite bitter. So they smell really good, but they taste really bitter. And the bitter flavor is so good for you. It's so good for you. And one of the things it does is it moves your digestion along, right? So it's dispersing that type of stagnation in your digestive system. But the bitter flavor isn't always what you want at the end of your day, and again, it's very good for you. I encourage you to drink, things that are bitter and teas that are bitter. But sometimes if you want to have like just a really enjoyable experience and you want to get all those wonderful relaxing properties without the bitter flavor, something like the Air Tea Kettle can be a really good option. Also, drinking them in tea, you're going to get a nice extraction of the monoterpenes in the Air Tea Kettle. Water is not always the most potent way to extract monoterpenes. So of course, if you put lavender in tea, you will taste the lavender, but it's not going to taste quite the way that it smells, and it is going to be quite bitter. So the Air Tea Kettle is a nice alternative for having a really nice experience with those monoterpenes that doesn't involve that really bitter flavor, and you're just getting that pure like aroma and the vapor that again you're breathing in, and it's going to have an immediate effect on your nervous system. Speaking of lavender, you can do one herb at a time in here. You can choose one herb at a time, and that can be a really nice way to get to know herbs. When I'm making blends for smoking or for inhalation, which in this again is a really nice alternative to smoking, I like to use blends. I don't like to typically just use one herb. So often I'll use one herb if I'm really trying to get to know that herb. Like, how does it make my body feel? Like if you really want to connect with that herb on a deeper level, using just one herb is a really nice option. But blends can be nice for many reasons. Blends are really nice for herbs that have very strong fragrances. So for instance, lavender. So just inhaling a lot of the vapor from just lavender by itself might be too strong for you. Sometimes that can sort of give you a small headache right here. So in that case, what I would do is make a blend with other herbs that are not as quite as fragrant, and you're just doing a pinch of lavender. It's a small part of the formula that you're making for yourself, or the blend rather. It can be nice to use as a base herbs that are really supportive for your lungs, because we are inhaling this. So mullein and marshmallow are really, really good choice. And we're primarily using leaves and flowers with this device. Those are more delicate plant material, and you're going to get a much better extraction experience from the delicate plant material with the Air Tea Kettle. So it can be nice to make a blend. I have sort of a concept when I'm making blends for smoking or for vaporization, where I like to include one herb that is supportive for the lungs, one herb that has really like robust qualities but is not extremely fragrant, and then one herb that is more fragrant. So for instance, the blend that I have in here now is marshmallow, which is supportive to the lungs, and the marshmallow leaf, which is not as potent as root, but again, leaf is more appropriate for this device. Marshmallow leaf, and Damiana, which is very relaxing and like has all these lovely qualities for the nervous system, but is not super fragrant. And then I have a little bit of hops. Hops is more fragrant, it is more potent. That is how I like to think of blends of the herbs. And the Beginner's Guide to Dry Herb Vaporization book has much more information about the qualities of different herbs that you might select. And I encourage you to also, mix and match like the nuances of the different herbs. Again, trying one herb at a time first can be a good way to let you know how it's going to make your head feel, how it's going to make your body feel, and then you can really have fun blending them. And as much as you can read about herbs, reading about herbs, of course, is fantastic. As much as you can read about herbs, with something like this, you really need to try different herbs yourself to see how they make you feel. That's something I love about working with plants and herbalism is, you are your own highest authority about how it is for you and your body. And so, but you need to have that data, you need to have the data of experience to see how it is actually affecting you. So where are you getting these herbs from? So I like to buy herbs in bulk. So I'm scanning for my different herbal supplies around here. So let's just take some skullcap. So I have some skullcap. This I've put in a jar. I'm almost out. I don't use actually dried skullcap much. It's I only use it in the dried form for like vaporizing really. Often I'll use fresh skullcap, say like in tinctures or glycerides. But so I buy herbs in this form that you can see. And this for leaves, this is what's called cut and sifted. This is, I would say, the best way to buy herbs. It's nice to buy herbs either directly from farms or from very reputable herb wholesalers, and you can buy them typically by the ounce, in 4-ounce packs, or by the pound. And now if you're only using them for dry herb vaporization, a 1-ounce pack is going to get you a long way. But buying herbs directly from farms or wholesalers is, firstly, it's the most cost-effective way, right? It's more cost-effective to buy single herbs in bulk, we would say, even if it's 1 ounce, than to buy blends of herbs. And mixing them yourself, again, gives you control over the entire experience. But this way you also can really get the best quality of herbs that you're able to. Buying herbs directly from a farm, of course, is preferable. It supports a small business. It creates a stronger herbal supply chain for all of us, which is important. But second to that would be getting them from a reputable wholesaler. And you want to look for herbal wholesalers that have direct relationships with farmers, that have information on their websites about sourcing, about the origin of herbs. You want at the least the country of origin, but if you can tell that a business has any sort of information about the farmers they work with, the sustainability practices they support, etc., that could be very important. always, but especially with a device like this, you really want to be sure that your herbs do not have chemical residues on them. And by chemicals, I mean like herbicides. I mean, obviously herbs they are, comprised of phytochemicals, the plant chemicals, but we really want to make sure that they do not have herbicides, pesticides, fungicides on them. We want to make sure that they're not contaminated, with heavy metals. There's a lot of contamination and adulteration in the natural products industry. We want to, we want to make sure the herbs are what they say they are, and you want to make sure that they're not contaminated with like microplastics, for instance, which is why, and all these reasons are why you don't want to just like open up a tea bag and use it, because tea bags maybe have microplastics. Also, the herbs that go into tea bags, unless you're buying very high quality tea, and when I say tea, I mean herbal tea, those herbs are probably, much lower quality herbs than when you're just buying them bulk from a good wholesaler or from a farmer. So to recap, herbs that are going to give you a really good experience with dryer vaporization are going to be rich in monoterpenes, because that is some of the primary constituents released through vaporization, and you'll know that because they are fragrant. So we want to choose herbs that are fragrant, and herbs have, many herbs are fragrant aside from just lavender and rose. Like I was just working with catnip here, or again, Damiana, hops. There are many herbs that are fragrant, and you want to blend them to make a blend that feels balanced. Not so, I think of it as being like high pitched, like something like lavender or hops is like high pitched and it can go straight to your head. Again, that's my experience. It might not be your experience. So you want to blend them in a way that feels balanced, and it can be helpful to include herbs in there that are very nourishing. Resinous herbs are going to give you a really nice experience too. Resinous herbs will give you like the beautiful vapor that you're going to see in here. Of course, many people like blending with hemp, with cannabis, etc. That's always an option. And this can be a nice way to expand that experience too, if that's something that is very important to you. Adding in other flavors, adding in other herbal qualities. So I encourage you to experiment. I encourage you to see what works for you, what you like. I encourage you to use this device as a way to connect with herbs on a deeper level and really explore them, see how they feel in your body, and also connect with them on a spiritual level. It is a way of bringing herbs into your body in a very gentle way, in a very peaceful way. And, it's really an experience that you can customize for yourself.